All right, I got a bunch of emails from folks over the last 24 hours about this new book coming out from the very short-lived White House press secretary Stephanie Grisham, who worked for Donald Trump for a little bit. She has written a new book, and some of the allegations in the book are just absolutely crazy. We're going to talk about them. Each is crazier than the last or the previous or whatever sort of a phraseology you want to use. Let's start with this first one about Donald Trump having what's being described as a surgical procedure. I'm going to talk about this in a second, and opting not to receive anesthesia, because if he had received anesthesia, he would have had to temporarily turn over presidential powers to the Vice President Mike Pence. This happened when George W. Bush had, I believe it was also a colonoscopy back during his presidency, and Dick Cheney was briefly temporarily given presidential power. So the story is Trump skipped anesthesia for a previously unreported procedure at Walter Reed to avoid giving Pence temporary power. The details are that Trump skipped anesthesia for a previously unreported colonoscopy in 2019, so he wouldn't have to temporarily relinquish presidential powers. This is according to a new book called I'll Take Your Questions Now. Stephanie Grisham wrote it, former White House press secretary and chief of staff to Melania Trump. She said in the book that this was for a regular colonoscopy. Now, let's talk about that a little bit. The initial story was, wow, Trump's pretty alpha. I mean, he's saying, do the surgery without anesthesia. That is wild. Then it came out it's a colonoscopy. So you might be asking, is it accurate to say that it is surgery? Is a colonoscopy really surgery? It is classified as a minor surgical procedure. Sometimes they're just taking a look. Sometimes if there's a polyp or something, then they are cutting something out, and then it's more clearly a surgical procedure. It is generally done with anesthesia. Often it's like a deep sedation. You're not like out like I was for my famous appendectomy, but you are sedated. But it is one of the things that is done without anesthesia, and some say that it is safer without a general sedation. I'm not a medical expert. I don't know exactly that, but it's the patient's choice, and sometimes patients don't realize they have that choice. But it is not inaccurate to call it a surgery in the sense that that is how it is classified. So the article goes on to say, Trump puzzled reporters with a mysterious, unscheduled November 2019 visit to Walter Reed. You might remember, this is that infamous, why did he go to Walter Reed? And added to the confusion by saying it was part of his routine annual physical for 2020. Remember, he said, I was just hanging out, and I thought I'd go and get a jump in 2019 on my 2020 physical. That was a lie. We believed it to be a lie at the time, and it was for a colonoscopy. But the big news is that he, according to Stephanie Grisham, opted not to receive the general anesthesia in order to maintain presidential power and not have to relinquish it to Vice President Mike Pence. Grisham wrote in the book, Trump could have used the procedure to spread awareness and educate Americans about the importance of colonoscopies. But as with COVID, he was too wrapped up in his own ego and his own delusions about invincibility. And he, quote, didn't want to be the butt of a joke. How immature do you have to be as a 70-plus-year-old man? So first of all, there's the desire to keep power. And maybe Trump was imagining, if Pence were president and I was the VP, I would be using this opportunity to try to somehow seize the power of the presidency when the president is being sedated for a colonoscopy. So maybe Trump's idea of I don't want to give it up to Pence was rooted in, if I were Pence, I'd be trying to seize power. We don't know, but that certainly tracks with Donald Trump. But then the other part of this is, the idea that you're going to be laughed at because you got a colonoscopy in your 70s, rather than, hey, you know what? This is a great opportunity to talk about the importance of routine screenings and colonoscopy being a part of that. But no, that's not the way that Trump functions. So it all tracks here. And For me, the bigger story is with this Stephanie Grisham book, and we're going to get in a moment to more of what she writes in the book. This is another person, Stephanie Grisham, who was in Trump's inner circle, had a front row seat to what was going on, who saw the reckless, dangerous, and petty behavior that Donald Trump was engaged in, did nothing, said nothing at the time, and later is speaking out about it now when there's an opportunity to make money from it from writing a book. That should come as no surprise either, because Trump was surrounded by these people, but it is yet another despicable action by one of these folks. Let's now talk about the next story from Stephanie Grisham's new book. One of our sponsors is Aura. Think about all of your online accounts, finances, your devices. How are you protecting them? Hacking, data breaches, identity theft, these are bigger issues now than they've ever been before. Aura is a new type of security service. It protects your online data, your internet connection, your devices with one subscription. You'll be alerted to fraud and threats quickly, like if your online accounts or passwords were leaked, or if someone tried to open a bank account in your name. With an easy online dashboard and alert sent straight to your phone, Aura keeps you in control and guides you through solving any issues. All plans come with a $1 million identity theft insurance to help recover stolen funds. So if you want to secure your online presence from hackers and scammers, check out Aura. You'll get 40% off all plans when you go to aura.com/Pacman. The link is right underneath this video.